Welcome to Girlfriends Bible Study, a live Bible study with Connie and friends. Each week, Connie and her girlfriends engage in a lively conversation as they read and study scripture. So, grab a pen, your journal, and your best friend, and enjoy this enlightening Bible study.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. In these glasses, my eyes are so fuzzy right now. Hopefully they'll work, but welcome to Bible Study Live with Connie and friends. And we have a couple of friends already who have signed on. And one of them is our special guest host this evening. Her name is Bria Lacour, and I'm going to bring her on camera in just a moment. But I just want to mention, we are continuing our May theme, Dreams in the Bible. And I'm excited to hear the message that Bria has for us tonight. She is an awesome and anointed woman of God. And so I've loved getting to know her and just hearing her declare the word of God. So I'm looking forward to tonight's teaching. So I am going to, without further ado, I'm going to remove the pen from myself, and I'm going to spotlight our wonderful Bria so that she can bring on tonight's message. So here we go. Welcome, 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 Bria. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hello. Oh, I see. I'm spotlight. I saw it all moving. Okay. Hi to everyone. I see Reva's on. Thanks for coming, Reva.
Hello.
Yes, and we've got people in vehicles. We've got Dabrion in a car and Gina on a train. So you got people all over the country tuning in from wherever they are.
And I think Reva's getting ready to go somewhere. So we're just all kinds of places today, and that's fine. Well, thank you, Connie, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share with you all. And I've been liking the Bible studies whenever I'm able to come on. And so I just love the storytelling aspect and how we just get into the story and try to understand. And so, I'm excited to do that. And we've been talking about dreams in the Bible. And the person who stood out the most to me is probably the person everyone thinks of when they think of dreams. Joseph the dreamer. They're like, Joseph, I actually was Googling some different things about Joseph. And one of the first things that comes up are like all these children's ministry videos. They're like Joseph the dreamer, his really nice coat, and all of these like cartoon, pictures of Joseph, because it's this popular story, that everyone kind of knows, whether you're a Christian or not, right? And I think there's cool things to learn from him. And there's like so many different ways you could go, different things you could talk about when it comes to the story. So I don't feel like I'm going to hit all of that. But what I thought of when it came to him and how it related to my life was what happens when you're given a dream way before what you feel like it's telling you is going to happen. Like, so some of the other Bible studies that have taught where we talked about dreams, we talked about how dreams can be prophetic. And a lot of times in the Bible, they're kind of talking about some kind of future thing. And I hope by the end of what I share, us reading this together, we even see like an even larger future hope that these things point to. But for myself personally, I've kind of been in a similar place to Joseph, where sometimes I feel like I see something and it's very, very clear to me, and what it means, and what God is saying. However, life is not lining up with exactly what that dream said, and I'm sure other people can relate too. So let's start by going to Genesis 37. And I'm going to jump around a little bit in Genesis. Sometimes I might summarize, but hopefully I'll be able to say all the verse references. So if you happen to write it down or you watch it later, you'll catch it. But Genesis 37, verse 1, I'm just going to read down through 11 and a little bit of the verses after that. So it says, Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his sons because he was the son of his old age, meaning, when it was like, maybe he was beyond the age of having kids, Joseph was born. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, so he favored him, right? They hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Imagine how that was. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars," representing his other brothers, "were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you've dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. And then just to kind of summarize what happens at this point, if you have in your Bible, I'm reading the ESV version, but sometimes, you have the little titles that we kind of put in there to help us understand what's going on. If you read further on, you actually see that his brothers end up faking his death to his father, and he actually ends up imprisoned, right? Well, just to pause before we go anywhere else, man, when I think about where Joseph was, he was so young, so, full of life, right? And he gets this dream. He's starting to realize the way that God speaks to him, the way that he, hears God, the way that he gains wisdom from God, the way he gets direction through these dreams. And so he shares them innocently, thinking like, oh, this is just, I guess this is what God is saying, and the people around him are like, whoa, like that is not something we feel comfortable with, kind of hits on their pride, right? So Joseph ends up obviously being imprisoned, and I could only imagine being him, how it felt to have this dream that, I would rule over, or, my family. However, like now I'm actually like down at the bottom of a pit in prison and completely separated from my family and don't know what happened. So skip on to let's see. Okay, we're going to next skip on to Genesis 42, but I'm going to kind of just explain what happens in all this time, okay? So from the time that Joseph is imprisoned, he ends up in a place with the Pharaoh at the time, and eventually basically gains favor in his time in prison through interpreting dreams to the point that he actually is promoted through this. So to kind of summarize that, you kind of see how Joseph learns over time how to use this ability to dream and hear from God that way, but also to interpret his dreams and others' dreams for the purposes of God. And by the end of all of that, when we get to chapter 42, things actually circle back around with his brothers. And some of what he saw years before in his dreams is now realized. And he's trying to figure out, okay, like my brothers that I haven't seen in years who sold me into slavery are now right in front of me. And all of these things that I saw in the beginning with me and my family are starting to make more sense. And everything that I even interpreted from others in prison and other people who worked for Pharaoh and Pharaoh himself, giving warnings, to about his kingdom and about what they were doing. has gotten me to this place now, where I have favor with the rulers and favor with God. So when we get to chapter 42, verse 1, I'll start there. Okay, so when Jacob, his father, learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, so Joseph has been promoted, elevated. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Kind of sounds similar to something else. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. So pausing here, obviously we see Joseph's seeing people who are basically the reason why he suffered thus far in life, or, a large part of that. Obviously, I'm not trying to negate other things that happen and contribute to being in these kinds of situations, right? But from what we see and what we know of Joseph, they were a key factor in how this happened. And now they're in front of him, and he has the opportunity and all the power, because he knows and has that authority to kind of do what he's doing, which is I kind of want to, make him sweat a little bit. And also, they don't even recognize me, their own brother who they, imprisoned. And so he tries to kind of give them the runaround, because they kind of lied and said that, "Oh, we have one brother who's gone," knowing good and well they contributed to Joseph being gone. And not to read all of what happens next, but basically they get the next youngest brother. And then he's like, "No, still, where's your other brother? You said there were this many of you, And in the end, Joseph reveals himself to them. So this is skipping on to, one second. There's so much in Genesis. I'm trying to get back to it. All right, when his brothers finally realize, "Oh, this is Joseph, he's still alive, he is alive, and he's ruler all over all of the land of Egypt," and they tell, their dad that their father actually confirmed that. And then, I'm sorry, guys, I had it here, but my notes started just going whack, so I can't see what I wrote, where this is. But I'm looking for the verse. If you could help me, Connie, I'm looking for the verse where he says, "What you intended to harm me, God actually intended for my good," which is somewhere in here. Connie's trying.
I think it's probably in chapter 45. in verses 4-7.
Oh, right. Okay. Where he reveals that he's their brother.
Mm-hmm. And he says why God did it.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's just start at 4. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive you for many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt, and of all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. Now, I can't exactly find the verse I was looking for in that, but that helps to show this verse where Joseph says, what you intended or purposed to harm me, God actually purposed for my good. And so in thinking about Joseph, like I mentioned earlier, I was just wondering, what can we take from watching how Joseph learned to hone in a gift and a skill that God gave him. And in the beginning, God gave him interpretation of the dream. He was like, okay, this means that my family is going to one day bow down to me. I'm going to be ruling over them. And in sharing that with them was a little disturbing for them. They were like, okay, that's strange. Like, that sounds prideful of you, because it was hitting on their own pride, of course. And I've learned in my own life, like, sometimes it's not the moment to share, or sometimes actually God wants to say something very specific to me that may not make total sense at the time, but over time I will see, and I've seen that in different ways in my life. And I'm sure you guys have too, in the ways that God speaks to you. And then we see through Joseph having all these opportunities over time as he kind of is promoted to this place, not knowing that there would be this famine, not knowing that his family line actually may not be able to continue if he weren't where he was and able to provide them with the grain that they needed. Not knowing all that would happen that way, however, continuing to grow in and with God, and knowing, okay, I have this opportunity and this opportunity to interpret this dream of the cupbearer or this dream of Pharaoh and gain favor. And throughout that, getting imprisoned wasn't the only thing, that tempted him. There were a lot of other temptations that you can see there, because there's some chapters in between when he gets his first dream as a child and what happens in the end when things come full circle with his family. And for me, I was also thinking about like the future hope that all of this points to, right? Like, sometimes we don't know how God's going to do it, or what he's going to do, when it comes to dreams that he's given us or what he's said that he'll do in our lives. But we do know that whatever happens, no matter how broken it is, if it's the result of other people's choices or even our own, or just, the brokenness of the world, because day by day, more and more brokenness, right? At the same time, God has a plan, right, that he's fulfilling through us as well. And while we may not know why certain things happen the way that they do, like Joseph says, God purposes it all, right? So even though we can't make sense of brokenness sometimes, or the suffering or the things that happen in between what we thought we saw that he was saying, and it coming to fruition, whether that's us on a smaller scale in our lives or on a larger scale, the world. That's what I start to think about sometimes. It's like, God, what is happening? Like, yet again, another shooting or these different things happening. Like, what is actually going on? But remembering the overarching plan, the overarching idea, the overarching purpose that God has, whether it's on a small scale in my life or on a larger scale, thinking about, oh man, actually, well, there is hope in Jesus. There is a future hope that things point to, whether it's small in my life or big overall. So that's the things I have to share. I hope that wasn't too, affected by my notes kind of disappearing. But but any thoughts from everyone else?
So first, thank you so much, Bria. Thank you so much. Joseph is one of my favorites. As you know, when we talked about who we identified with most, Joseph was first on my list. And two things. One, as soon as you mentioned at the point that God shows you the vision through a dream and the moment when it's actually fulfilled, like there can be years in between, because I want to say, they talked about him being 17 at one point, and I'm almost sure they mentioned that he's 30 later. And imagine, I mean, that's like a full 13 years. I'm almost sure, and I'd have to look through to find it, but we know it was years. He's married with children. They talk about what his kids' names are. So it was clearly years later. And it reminded me when I lived in DC the first time, which was from 1988 until 91, I had a dream about sitting at a humongous brown conference table and giving assignments to a team of mine to do whatever it was they were supposed to do. And I had that dream. It was a recurring dream. I had it all the time, over and over again. And years later, when I moved back to California for the third time, and I want to say it was in probably 2000. So knowing I had the dream sometime between 88 and 91, now we skip to maybe 2004 or 5. And I was sitting in my no weapon office, and there was a conference room in the building where our office was. I was sitting around the table with all the people at the table and talking about their assignments. Some were actors, some were producers, some were casting. And at one point, the deja vu that washed over me, because we're talking, even if I had it just before I left DC, 91 until 2004, that is like a full 13 years. Like that is a really long time. But in that moment, I literally lost my words. I stopped talking because I had a flashback of sitting in that very spot and doing what I was doing. And it was amazing. And still now, I mean, being on boards and sitting with, different organizations and being at that table and doing those things, I still get deja vu at times, knowing that I was in my 20s when I had that dream. I was mid-20s, and I certainly am no longer there, but how many years was it before that got fulfilled? So that was the first thing. It was the reminder of when I experienced exactly, I had not ever noticed when you said, when you read the part about Joseph in chapter 42, when you read,
was it the beginning of 42?
It was where you, he remembered his dream. You said something like that, and maybe you just made the reference. I know he recognized him.
Yeah, 42 verse 9, and Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them.
Yeah, I never noticed that they actually pointed out, then he remembered his dreams about them. I never noticed that. I mean, they tell the story, so we already know the beginning, the end from the beginning when we're reading it. But I didn't ever notice that he was reminded, however many, 13, 14, 15, however many years later, he was reminded. He remembered those dreams of them bowing down to him. So that was new to me. Reading that, just that one sentence was new, that he remembered those. And then I was reminded, we talked about this scripture last year when we were talking about dreams in March of last year. And Pastor Rosalind happened to say, did you notice that the two dreams that he had, first with his brothers, then with his brothers and parents, his brothers interpreted the dreams. His father interpreted. He just said what the dream was, but his brothers and father actually interpreted the dreams, not him. So it's interesting that in the beginning, he's having the dreams, someone else is interpreting them. Then later, other people are having the dreams and he is interpreting them. But the fact that they were mad at him, he just told them the dream. He didn't say, and you know what that means? You're going to be bowing down before me. Like they brought that up. He didn't say it. And so that was interesting that it was the brothers who interpreted, the father who interpreted. And then later, he became the interpreter of the dream. So those were the things that really stuck out to me and I found interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even mentioning like you said, you know, he remembers, but it's so many. I just tried to Google it really quick. He was maybe 39, so maybe it's 22 years later. Something like that. I tried to Google real quick to see, but something like that. And I feel like I'm turning 30 this year and I've only been a Christian since 2015. But I feel like there have been things that even felt like, man, 7 years ago, like, you know, this felt like, and I don't really remember until, man, things are kind of right in front of me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, God spoke to me about this. So just even what you said reminds me that there are things along the way, like God gives us markers. He gives us like these prophetic dreams, direction, all like Joseph's dreams that he even ended up interpreting. Some of them were very directional. Some of them were just prophetic and talked about a future. But you see how throughout his life, God is directing. And sometimes for us, it's not until we look up and we're like, oh, I'm here now, you know,
right.
God carried me in hope this whole way. Or, you know, that's on a smaller scale, our lives, but on a larger scale, like the overarching story of God and of us and of Jesus and God's mission to save us and really redeem everything. It's like, okay, there's points of where God's carrying us in hope to the future hope. So
yeah. And you know, as you know, I journal all the time. But how many times have we had a dream that God was showing us what was going to happen in the future? And it's so many years in the future, we even forget about the dream. And then, you know, people like, I remember I had that dream. I never write mine down, or I don't remember my dreams. But there are times when God has spoken to us to let us know something's coming. I know, just get prepared. You know, like thinking about all that Joseph had to go through to be prepared to be head of Egypt. He had to go through some stuff. And so, but if you don't know that at some point, Bria, you're going to be president. So I need you to do all the things now that you're going to need to know when you're president. So I know it seems unfair for me to tell you this early, but if I don't tell you now, you won't do the things that you need to do to be ready for when it happens. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I'm sure his brothers, like you said, they were jealous and all of that. And yet it was planting a seed. God was planting a seed in Joseph of you are going to be a great ruler. So I need you to start working on that now. His integrity, like thinking about what happened with him and Potiphar's wife. If you're going to be the kind of ruler that's going to have people bowing down to you, don't get caught up with any, you know, messy mess. So, you know, keep it together. Don't get caught. So it's interesting when you think about that distance, and that I needed to hear. There are times when it feels like an unfair delay between what we've been told, what we've dreamed about, the prophetic word that's been spoken over us, or the vision we had. And then, you know, right, you're about to go through some things. Don't give up. That part you're about to go through, don't give up. We forget the don't give up. Like, we don't want to hear we're about to go through. But if it's not only are you about to, I need you to, so that you can be ready for when the other thing happens. You know, you think about people in the military and boot camp, and they don't want to go through that, But then when they're under fire by the enemy, it's like muscle memory. They know what to do. They know how to use their weapon. They know how to protect each other. They know how to operate as a team. Let me just tell you, and I've talked about this on Bible study once before, but to me, I still get goosebumps and tears when I think about it. Gina's oldest son, Paul, we call him PJ, but Paul, he was in the military and he was leading his troop. He was like whatever the position is where you lead the troop. And one of his troop members with his backpack, they're in enemy territory, and one of them doing stuff out of order bumped into PJ with his backpack and knocked him over the side of a cliff, over the side of a mountain. And PJ, knowing he could not even yell out, otherwise he would give away their location, but he wanted to. So on his way down, as he's falling, he covers his mouth to keep from yelling. This is how well trained he is. He hits the ground. They assumed he was dead. He did break his back, and somehow, honestly, God, somehow he was able to get up. He done something to some vertebrae. He was able to climb back up the mountain, and I can only imagine excruciating pain that he still deals with to this day. And they were so surprised to see him because they thought he was a complete goner, and he had to keep his platoon people from killing the guy who pushed him over by mistake. But I just think about the character, the integrity, the preparation, that you get knocked off the side of a mountain and you don't even go, like, don't give it away. You're so well trained that when you get knocked over, the first thing you do is cover your mouth. Just imagine the training and the character of somebody who can do that. It is unbelievable to me. He in general, he and his character are unbelievable to me. He is such an amazing young man. And, but just thinking about that kind of training, like Gina typed in the chat, get ready. You're going to have to go, right, Debrian? You're going to have to go through some things, get prepared. Like, this is going to happen, but you're going to have to go through some things. Just imagine. So, just thinking about that piece of, I know personally my frustration when my reality does not look like the vision God showed me. It does not. And I'm frustrated. But okay, you got to go through some things so that when it does look like that, you can handle it. You can be prepared to handle it. Ooh, that in-between time. We could do a whole thing on that in-between time. Can we just talk about the in-between time? Woo!
I think even while you were speaking, I thought of like Jesus, and when the Bible talks about for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Like he actually could see that. Like he knew that, but
right.
Like way better than anyone else did. And he knew, right? Remember how confused his disciples were, even though he told them 10 billion times, I'm going to have to go. Like,
right.
Something that's happening. They still were like, huh, what are you doing? And what are we left with? But like Jesus, even, in his humanity, struggled with the thought of all this, but he knew what was beyond the cross. He knew what was sacrifice, what was beyond suffering and trial and all these things. And on a smaller scale, we can know, okay, if Jesus in his humanity, though he was, divine, like experienced what I experienced, what Joseph felt, what we can feel when there's a delay, then how much more can I like him, because he gives me, like God gives us his spirit so that like him, we can, endure.
Yeah.
how much more, you know? So
yeah. And you're right. If even Jesus said, Father, if it's okay, can you just let this cup pass for me? But not my will, yours be done. But if it's your will, can you just go ahead and take this cup? Because don't nobody want to be on the cross. So he tried. He put it out there. So the fact that we struggle, and like you said, he already knew the end from the beginning. You know, if Jesus even said, can this cup pass for me? Then we have to understand sometimes you want the cup to pass. Sometimes you do.
but for the hope,
Yeah.
I know a
Hey,
lot
Brian.
are kind of on the go, but anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
That going back to specifically talking about Joseph and what you were sharing, Connie, about well, both of you were sharing about him not being the one that actually interpreted his dreams that he had about his brothers, that it was his actual brothers, his father, that did the interpretation. And the question has always been for me, when was the point when God revealed to him that he wasn't just a dreamer, but that he was the interpreter of dreams, for him to even be able to feel like he could speak to the baker and the cupbearer to say, this is what it is that you're dreaming about, or to say to Pharaoh, this is what you're dreaming about, that type of thing, for him to even know that. And then going back to what you were just talking about in terms of Jesus knowing what was before him and feeling like, for me, the way that I saw it was that the Lord knew that Joseph couldn't mentally nor emotionally handle what it was that he was actually showing him. So he couldn't necessarily give him the interpretation of his own dreams, that he allowed him to interpret the dreams of others, because he was able to be in a different, he could be from a more neutral, objective position, because it wasn't him. And in his mind, and I really do believe that it wasn't until the moment when in the scripture, when it says he remembered the dreams that he had dreamt about his brothers, that he actually did put it together. I do not believe that even going through all the things that he went through, that he was remembering those dreams about his brothers or about the sheaves and the stars, that didn't even occur to him, because I feel like what it was that the Lord was doing for him by taking him through all the things that he experienced, had he known what it was that he was going to go through, he wouldn't have chosen to go through those things, because we are not as strong as our Jesus. There is no way that he would have been able to experience all the things that he experienced. And there's no way that he would have been the ruler, the understanding, empathetic ruler that he was, to get to the position where he was, had he known all along that that's what he was supposed to do. He had no idea. It was just a matter of him experiencing what he experienced, with him being, treated the way that he was by his brothers, the type of hurt and pain that had to have done to him. And then for him to be doing his best to be an upstanding man and fight off the wife, and still for him to wind up in prison, that for him to experience all those things, that was what God had to have happen to him for him to be the type of ruler that he was. That is what gave him the experience, the knowledge, the understanding, the empathy to say, this is how it is that people should be treated. This is how it is, how a ruler should act. Because no other ruler would experience anything like what he had experienced. Had Joseph stayed at home with his brothers and his father, basically he was the privileged boy. He had no troubles. He got everything he wanted. He was the favored son. He wouldn't have been the compassionate, empathetic man that he became if he had stayed where he was. He had to experience what he experienced in order for him to become the ruler. And I think that is why specifically he says what he says: what you intended to harm me, God intended for good and to save these people, because that was the ruler that they needed, was one who knew the hardship that he experienced.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Preview of Dabrion's hosting. I will be at that night. No, that was really good. That was good. And I just thought while you were talking, like, man, the Bible talks about how our character is formed. How is perseverance formed?
Yeah.
I don't think we can just, like have, I don't know, is an easy life provide that? I'm not sure, or one without trial or something, or how do we grow in patience? Usually through uncomfortable situations. How do we grow in the ability to love? And, usually it's something like that rubs, that provides the space for us to grow,
Right.
so I really liked what you mentioned.
Thank you.
It's real. It's real. It was a great point. Great points, really. So, you think about the count it all joy scriptures. And so when you are going through and like now, y'all who are close to me know some of the things going on. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But then I have to think, I can't see the end from this point. I know this is not what I saw, but I don't know what it is, but I recognize that what may be difficult to go through now, God has a purpose for later. And just remembering that is really important. Riva, are you able to come on camera? Did you want to share anything for Bria, with Bria?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, can I come off camera? Oh,
Yeah, we see you.
Okay. My internet has been going in and out a little bit. But I feel like a lot of the points I was thinking was already touched on. But some of the things that you all were talking about, like, Joseph being 17 and then coming into this role a lot later in life. And I know for me with Joseph, I'm always thinking he's like my person when I think of when I'm struggling and like, Lord, when is this going to come to pass? Or when is this story going to be over? Like, when am I going to get to that end point? And Joseph is always just like my role model because I'm like, you went through a lot and you still managed to keep pushing. Because even with the thing with Potiphar's wife, I don't know, me personally, I would have been like, all right, this is where I'm signing off because this is not even adding up. But I think, yeah, with him being who he was at 17, I know a lot of times we look at Joseph and we're like, oh my gosh, he was so naive. Why did you tell your brother that? And why did you tell your parents that? But it's like y'all said, like it was him building character through those years where he was waiting for that time. And so, I'm pretty sure wisdom came into that too. And like Dave Brian was saying, like the leader that he is today, or then, is due to, all the trials and tribulations he went through. And so, yeah, I just really look up to Joseph when I'm going through my struggles because I know he's always been such a good role model of how to continue to persevere when the world is just like not working in your favor, it looks like. So I think this is very good. I'm really glad I was able to join tonight.
Oh, me too. Thank you, Riva, for your thoughts. And you made it through with your glitchy internet, but we heard you. We saw you.
I know I feel like rejoining with audio, but I got most of it, like 95%. So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Bria knows, but I'm like you, Riva. I identify a lot with Joseph, especially when I'm going through, and also because I have prophetic dreams. And it's interesting. A lot of people, when they talk about people going through, they mention Job. And I don't identify with Job at all. Not at all. But Joseph, absolutely. And for me, Job is different. Job he had it all and then lost it. But also Job to me feels a little bit like Eeyore. He's like, okay, whatever. You're the Lord, whatever you say. And I don't feel like that. I'm more like Joseph and in terms of, okay, that hurt. I hate it down here, but come on, let's keep going. Hey, you got a drink? Yeah, I can help you. Like I have more optimism. And to me, Joseph is an optimist. Like no matter what he went through, they would say he still did the best on the job. He was, Potiphar's in the jail. They put him in charge of all the prisoners. Like everywhere he was like, I'm gonna just do my best. I don't care what I'm going through. Whereas when I think of Job going through, he's like, okay, all right, but I praise the Lord. Like it seems so pitiful. And I don't feel that Joseph never presented as pitiful, ever. And to me, Job did. And so I identify with Joseph. He went through some stuff. I've gone through some stuff, but I don't ever want to be, Eeyore. I just, So
yeah,
I do.
Joseph definitely kept good spirits. Yeah.
Absolutely. Bria, we need a title for this message. What is the title of this message?
Ooh, that is a good question. Um, I mostly was thinking dreams that communicate a future hope or give us something to point to in that way. That's what the personal title is kind of long. So if you want to reinterpret that, you're more than welcome to give it a short title, but
I like dreams that communicate a future hope. I'm not mad at that.
like they could be directional, they could be prophetic, right? But through it, we're given hope.
I love it. I love it. It can be like Star Wars Episode 7.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Gina, we saw your comments in the chat. She's on the train, but she said it was an excellent message. And kudos, Bria. Thank you so much for being our guest host tonight. And I hope you will come back and be a guest host again. Reva, you are welcome to join us. We do this every Thursday at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. And what if it's a theme or we have a conversation, but as Bria said, it's a story. We just learn from it. We share what we get from it and how it applies to our life. So thank you for being with us as well. So I'm going to sign off of Facebook. So bye, Facebook. And then I'm going to